Begin Podfix Network transmission. In 3, 2, 1.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, the show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing. I couldn't say it. Licensed fishing guide. I'm your best friend. I've been guiding all weekend. I know you are, John. Hang on a second. I've been guiding all weekend, and my brain's hurting. John, who are you? Go ahead.
No, right. I'm sorry, man.
I was doing a thing.
All right, what do you want to?
No, go. You got it. I'm Crappie Hippie.
And I am the Crappie Hippie, co-founder of Glasswater Angling.
Awesome. And we make a show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. It's always interesting, usually funny, and mostly true. John, how are you?
I am doing good, How about yourself?
I'm so tired.
I know.
I've been on this. So this is our big holiday weekend for fishing. We just our biggest weekend of the year. So we've in the last 3 days we've probably put in 25 hours on the ice, which is a long time on the ice. And I'm all sunburned and windburned, and the weather was great, so it's fine. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But tonight on the show, here's what's going to happen. I have some corrections from last week's show. Right, we're going to talk about Wyoming Whiskey. We're going to talk about fish on cocaine in the news. Got 2 stories on fish on cocaine. It's kind of to pair with the Cocaine Bear movie coming out soon. Also, we're going to debate the ethics of a catch and kill ice fishing derby. The biggest one in New Hampshire just happened. And a friend of ours, friend of the show, lost the derby. And he's such a nerd, he did a statistical analysis of the fish that win the derby to find out why he lost the derby. So that's kind of today's show in a big bite right there. John, sound good?
Hey, it sounds fantastic.
All right, we're going to go right into it. Because last week, John, we started out the show, and I said here on the podcast, which, by the way, is usually true, or mostly true this show, so it's okay for me to be wrong. Preface that. But I said that pike were not native to Vermont. Not pike. We weren't talking pike. We were talking... What's the other one? Muskie weren't native to Vermont or Maine. And I probably got maybe 7 or 10 emails and messages reminding me that I don't know everything and that those fish are native to those places. Now, I didn't fact check, so I still might be right. But according to enough listeners, I'm wrong. So I'm going to trust them.
Well, I'm coming down on the side of the listeners, bro, because doesn't Maine border on the St. Lawrence River?
I have no idea.
And isn't
I don't even know where Maine is.
Champlain shared between Vermont and New York, so
yeah,
I think these places have muskie. I know the St. Lawrence River used to be legendary. I mean, our good friend Gunther on oh my God, what is his podcast called?
I don't know.
Bluefish Radio.
Oh yeah, from Canada, our friend.
Yeah.
He's the blind guy.
Oh, he is. Yeah, he's
blind guy in a boat. But he should call his podcast "Blind Guy in a Boat." Because I would listen more often.
There's a lot of podcasts I'd listen to more often if I once again had a 40-hour week and was 3 people. But a 40-hour day, excuse me, and was 3 people. But anyway, he talks a lot about the muskie populations in some of these traditional fisheries on his side of the line, and I hear the St. Lawrence River come up.
Well, I'm confident. I'm confident in my wrongness on this, and I have no problem being wrong. It does not bother me one bit when I'm wrong, and I'm fine with it. So now you know. Now you know. So I'm not always right. And I love hearing from listeners to tell me.
Yes,
you tell me when I'm wrong, and I will come on here and yell at you for it. But I'll also be glad you did it. So thank you for doing that. I also want to quickly start the show with a shout out to listener John Bram. Now, John Bram booked an ice fishing trip with me today and dragged 16 of his family members up to fish with us. And he's actually a Fish Nerds and Lure Love fanboy. And huge fan of both shows. And came up and was so excited to bring 17, counting himself, people fishing with me today. So
that is so awesome, man.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. He asked for inside information on what happened to Lure Love. I told him that Tim died. That's all I can say.
They were trying to get the ultimate fishing lure.
That's right. Game over. So I didn't give them nothing. But we had a great time fishing with them today. Can you imagine bringing that many people ice fishing?
I know I cannot. And I admire people with that sort of energy and that sort of ability to organize people and get them somewhere to have a good time. These people are key.
It's challenging.
Keeping fun in this world.
It is challenging, but the whole crew was great. They were game, which is really important. If you're going to go fishing on a charter on the ice in New Hampshire in February, you need to be game. And they were game. They came to play. But there was a lot of them. And I luckily had Vinny with me, and we had Ben, who's just a local friend of ours, who came out and helped out too. So having some extra hands up on the ice made a big, big difference for us. And everyone caught as many fish as they wanted. That's how good the fishing was.
Wow. That is an awesome deal.
Today, so we fished in the exact same spot yesterday for 11 hours. And every fish we had to fight for. They did not want to get caught. Today, it was like they wanted to be on top of the ice. They were like, you know what I want? Sunshine. I'm going to come up and breathe some fresh air, sit in the sun, because today was easy fishing. So,
well, I know how that goes.
Yeah, I love an easy fishing day. Boy, as a guide, if you can get 17 people on fish in the first hour, you've won.
Yeah.
Won.
You're a miracle, man. Absolutely.
You've won, so I'm happy about that. So thanks, John Bram, for both listening and for coming fishing with us. I also gave him a Fish Nerds hat and decal, too, so I hooked him up.
Well, that's just all right.
Can't even buy those anymore. I don't have any left. I'm out. That's it. They're gone.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Fish Nerds are broke, by the way, so we can't buy more stuff for a while. We need to get this podcast making some money at some point. So, speaking of money, John.
Yeah.
You want to jump into news here?
Let's do it.
Because that's our money segment. We're going to talk about fish on cocaine in the news.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
All right, John, with the new movie Cocaine Bear coming out, I know you're a big fan of Coke. Have you seen the trailers for this movie, Cocaine Bear? It's based on a true story.
I mute commercials, so I've seen it, but I haven't listened to it. But I am familiar with the original story from My Favorite Murder and other people that have covered it. So
I'm not familiar at all with it, but I saw the name and I thought there has to be fish on cocaine, right?
Absolutely.
Right,
we know that. We did one of my first stories that I did with you, bro.
Years ago.
On the Thames. All the coke in the water in the Thames.
Well, that was one I had today. So I'm going to skip that one. But let's talk about frantic salmon on cocaine.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, because I did have the cocaine on the Thames River queued up, but I forgot that you did that one. But you know what? We could swap that with a drunk fish story.
Oh boy, that's great.
Fish that like to drink. So, and if my computer will load on me, we'd be in great shape. The headline here, John, is "Smells fishy are frantic jumping salmon high on cocaine." So that sounds like a normal thing. But in Germany, this fish farm has a crazy thing happening. Salmon are trying to jump out of the river out of the fish tanks in ways that they don't normally do. It's erratic behavior. It happened back in June of 2020, and they try to jump out of the water in a panic on a Lanuve Kirchenbaum Albom site in Sauerland in Germany. Upon investigation, the analysis said they detected cocaine and cocaine degradation running in the stream there, which is feeding those fishes.
What?
So you have all these fish acting crazy on cocaine. And it's almost like a feeling of discomfort is what the scientists say. Like almost that they're going through like withdrawal from the cocaine.
Okay.
So they're looking for more. Yeah.
That just blows. I mean, come on. I mean, oh boy, why did I say that? But anyway, that just sucks because these poor fish, they didn't sign up for this stuff. I mean, what's the stream run by Germany's hottest dance club with free cocaine at the door?
Well, it took a while to figure it out. They did all kinds of sampling, and they finally analyzed it and found that there was cocaine in it. In other things, they also found herbicides, other pharmaceuticals in there as well, but in smaller quantities. And so
who's going to start bottling this water and selling it? That's my next problem.
Well, I'm in, John. I could use the energy.
Stop it.
So. But anyway, so after all this breakdown, they found all these other chemicals, but they weren't enough to affect the behavior. It turns out benzodiazepines, benzoyl-gonine, I think I said. That's a breakdown of cocaine. I said it wrong. Doc's going to hate me. But that's all they found mostly in the tanks is that. So all their behavior is all from the breakdown of cocaine, and that would make sense. And evidence shows that humans leave their footprints everywhere. It's because obviously people are doing cocaine, and it came from employees who worked and they came across. They worked there, and it also came in from an illegal discharge of sewer near the stream. So in that area, the cocaine, people are doing so much cocaine, it's getting into the waters, both from employees at that site and from the local sewage. And that's where the cocaine's coming from.
I don't even, I just don't even know what to say.
I know. Well, we're seeing it all over the place. I mean, you did the story on cocaine eels years ago. And again, that was coming from like the drug manufacturing in London. We see all kinds of drugs in local waterways where we see fish who are on antidepressants because there's such high numbers in the water. So many people are on these, are dumping down the drains, and they're getting to the fishes. So it shouldn't be surprising to find salmon on cocaine. Now, whether the salmon attack and kill people and make a horror film, that remains to be seen. But maybe cocaine bear successful, maybe cocaine salmon is next.
Cocaine salmon has got to be next. I mean, the cocaine bear story is about a guy that was kind of an amateur. I'm going to make some money, eating money, dealing coke, and he went down and got a load. He ended up having to dump a bunch of it out of his plane, and that poor bear came upon it. These poor fish, I can see it. It's going to be the next thing. In fact, somebody ought to write My Favorite Murder and tell Karen and Georgia about this one so they can add it to their collection, because they have cocaine bear, they have cocaine wild pig.
Oh, do they?
From Italy, yeah. Wow. And so they would need a cocaine salmon story. And since they have about 20 million downloads a show, and we have like 20?
Maybe 22,
Okay.
21 now that we did stories about cocaine fish.
That would be cool to fill them in. But anyway, it's funny. We try to make funny. But yeah, we got fish growing boobs because they're, not literally, but because of the hormones in the water. We got fish. I don't know. Where is M. Night Shyamalan? He loves to do these sorts of stories.
I don't know. It's coming soon, John. It's coming soon. Now, cocaine salmon also could be a recipe. So
what about the cocaine in the fish?
Yeah, sounds delicious. What a delight. So yeah, that's my first story. And I was originally going to do a story on PFAS and the fishes and all this other stuff. And I was reading our show notes and just getting kind of depressed. And I thought, you know what? We got to talk about cocaine. And now we have to talk about drunk fish.
Let's do it.
Because they've been studying fish. And scientists love studying a fish called a zebrafish. Because it shares.
Tell me why.
Well, it shares a lot of traits of humans as far as the way it metabolizes things. So they like to study behavior of those fish and make comparisons. The headline here is fish are reckless when drunk, study finds. It's a real headline and the real science. All right, so yeah, I mean, we know the effects of alcohol on humans, right? We know that if you have a little bit to drink, you lose your inhibitions. Maybe you act a little bit crazier. Maybe you become more mellow, right?
Right.
But so the scientists from NYU, the Polytechnical School of Engineering Dynamic System Laboratory, did an experiment. They took zebrafish and they allowed the zebrafish to swim in a solution of ethanol. And they put the fish in tanks, diluted from 0%, that's your control. There's no alcohol in there. And then 0.25%, 0.5, and 1. And before being transferred to fresh water and monitored for how they interact with sober fish. They like to watch sober and drunk fish get together. Now, as a human, it's really fun to be a drunk in a crowd. But it's less fun to be the sober human in a crowd of drunks.
For sure.
Right? No one likes being that guy. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hanging out with these people. And Clay's at it again. How much is he going to drink tonight?
Why am I always the designated driver? This sucks.
Yeah, but the team found that just like in humans, fish that were slightly buzzed had less inhibitions and showed a less fear or hesitation as opposed to fish that were sober.
So you're telling me like the guy sidles up to another zebrafish and
Mhm.
say, hey, babe, you got stripes that just won't quit.
Yeah. Well,
How
they,
about you and me?
yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Does that anal fin go all the way to your caudal fin? So these fish also appear to act more boldly and become leaders of groups of fish. The ones that were a little buzzed will become the leaders in the tank because they're so bold. They swim faster. Also congruous with humans, just like in humans, those who were exposed to the full dose 1% of ethanol were a little bit too tanked and their leadership skills diminished. And that caused them to lag behind the sober fish and got wobbly in their movements.
And then they eventually puked?
Yeah,
in
well,
the
yeah.
tank?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just to let you know, too, by the way, that within 24 hours of being put into fresh water with no alcohol, all the fish sobered up, and a couple of them had a day or so of recovery afterwards, just like in humans. And the reason they study this is because they're looking at genetics of humans, because zebrafish have a lot of similarities to humans with regards to development, behavior, and genetics. And another a previous study found that when eggs are exposed to alcohol, the fish grow up to be more antisocial, which is insight on how a mother's alcohol consumption affects human babies. So they're kind of making these leaps. But scientists could not say whether zebrafish experience hangovers for sure, but they did note that they get back to complete normalcy after a couple of days, which we already talked about. And they didn't draw any real conclusions from there. We just know that zebrafish, when they drink, like to party. So the question
The
that they,
fish that loves to party.
the question they can't answer, which I believe Jonathan Balcom could. Jonathan Balcom wrote the book "What a Fish Knows," all about fish behavior and fish feelings, and he claims that fish have feelings. We had him on the show a long time ago. It was a really fun interview to do.
Oh yeah, and it's one of our biggest shows. Anyone would benefit from listening to that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
interesting.
A lot
It
of fun. And Jonathan Balcom, even though we disagree with him, great person, good sense of humor. And I love talking to people who I disagree with, especially if they've got humor on their side, because it makes it very easy to have a conversation. But I'd be curious to see from him, do you think those fish enjoyed being drunk? Right?
Well, you know it's probably the same thing as humans. You enjoy it while you're doing it, and then afterwards you're like, "What did I do? What did I say?"
Yeah. Same thing. Do they have regrets? Do they get a tattoo maybe they don't want to talk about anymore?
And you know some microbrew dude is out there listening to this going, "Zebrafish."
I'm just
That's it. That's it. Zebrafish ale. You know.
I'm just happy some dude's listening. All right, let's wrap the news up.
Let's do it.
Wrong button. All right, John, I do want to give a quick review to Wyoming Whiskey. Over Christmas, they sent me whiskey. This is the second time Wyoming Whiskey has sent me a bottle of whiskey. Speaking of drunk fish. Do you drink, John?
Not when I'm asleep.
No. All right. So you drink a little bit. Do you enjoy whiskey?
Depends on what kind. I mean, I only enjoy like bourbon
Mhm.
and Tennessee sipping whiskey and Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, rye whiskey,
I love rye.
corn whiskey. Yeah, that's it. But that's it.
Yeah,
That's
as long
all
as
I
it rhymes with ski, I'm in. All right. So Wyoming Whiskey is the second time they sent me whiskey, which is really wonderful. It's delicious. It's nice and smooth. I got this review here. It's the nose has a nice amount of sweetness. It wafts upwards from a glass, revealing a nose of vanilla bean, cherries, and raisins. Letting the libation breathe also reveals a nuance of caramel and cornbread. The experience, despite coming in at 88 proof, the Wyoming Whiskey small batch bourbon has a light mouth feel. That's a good review, right?
I love it. I mean, I know I want to try it.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means. I didn't write that. I cut and pasted it. I don't know how to review whiskey, John.
Well, but because you thoroughly agreed with it. That's the thing, right?
Well, I don't know. I didn't taste any of that stuff because my taste buds don't work in the way that a whiskey sommelier taste. I don't know how what you can call a whiskey taster, but it doesn't work that way for me. But I really liked it. And that's all I can tell you about it is it was delicious. It was smooth. It didn't give me snee, John. Wait, do you know what snee is?
No.
You ever do a shot of whiskey that has so much bite to it, you get spontaneous nipple erection?
Oh, okay.
SNE,
Okay.
spontaneous nipple erection. It didn't give me that. Nope. Gave me a nice warm feeling, but
Yeah,
didn't, not
okay.
over the top. It was great. And I just want to thank Wyoming Whiskey for sending it out to me. I'm sorry my reviews aren't from a whiskey taster background, but it was delicious.
Well, next time, Wyoming, send me the thing, okay?
Let me tell you a story, John, about a real whiskey tasting I went to, hanging out with a bunch of people from Scotland.
Oh, my.
All right. So I used to work at a summer camp. I'm not going to say its name, but longtime podcast listeners will be able to figure that out. And I was their fishing guy. And it was run by the adults in the camp were a few old people like me, and the other old people were Scottish people from Scotland. And Scotland people can drink. And once a summer, we would do a whiskey, bourbon, scotch, whatever tasting party. And everyone would bring a bottle, and we'd all have a glass, 2 glasses, 1 glass of water for rinsing your mouth and 1 for spitting in. We're not supposed to swallow it.
Right.
And the first 4 or 5 sips, people are staying on point. Taking a sip, they're talking about the whiskeys, they're spitting it in their spitting glass, rinsing it in their water, drinking the water from the water glass. And I'm getting drunker and drunker, even though I'm spitting out the whiskey and taking sips of water. And then 6 drinks in, I'm going blind, John. And the guy behind me, a Scottish guy, starts giggling until he's red in the face. And I'm like, why are you laughing so much? It turns out he was spitting his whiskey into my water. And so when I was sipping water, I was just getting more and more tanked as we
Hammered.
I was getting smashed. So yeah. Anyway, that's the whole story. That's my review for Wyoming Whiskey. Thank you, Wyoming Whiskey. Please check out their website. Please buy some Wyoming Whiskey, and you can buy some from me and John, and we'd appreciate that. So Wyoming Whiskey, delicious. Delicious whiskey.
Right on.
Right on. All right, John, next up, we've got our friend Mike. Mike STEFFAN is a scientist in Maine, and he fishes the Great Rotary Ice Fishing Derby in New Hampshire every year. This derby is statewide, and it's a catch and kill derby, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Not yet. I'm just going to give you the background of the derby. And it raises money for the Rotary of Meredith, New Hampshire. It raises tens of thousands of dollars a year, might even be $100,000 a year for the Rotary. All that money goes to local charities and nonprofits. All the fish that are caught are nailed to a board with their weights and measured, and the winner gets $15,000 with lots of prizes under that as well. There's thousands of dollars in prizes to give away from these fish that are killed. All the fish that are killed are donated to the Squam Lakes Science Center to feed the raptors that they have there for their science education programs. All the raptors there are all birds that went through rehab but couldn't be released into the wild. So there's a kind of your chain of what happens in this derby. So after this discussion with Mike about his derby loss, you and I are gonna talk about the ethics of a catch and kill fishing derby. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So let's talk about Mike STEFFAN. Mike STEFFAN, 2020, during the pandemic, he won the Great Rotary Ice Fishing Derby with a crappie that weighed in at 4.5 pounds, which is a really big crappie. And he won $15,000 for ice fishing for 2 days. It was a pretty good prize.
Yeah.
Now, John, you have some ethical lines. Do you have a dollar amount associated with your ethics?
Do I?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Is there a dollar amount?
I don't think so. I don't know. Oh, golly.
All right, I want you to soak on that for a while. We're gonna
let me soak on that.
Because we're going to talk about that after we hear the interview. Now, Mike won it a couple of years ago, and he entered that fish that won on the second day of the Derby. Now, the way the Derby works is the biggest fish on each day is put into a hat. Not literally the name of the person's put in a hat. There's no hat full of fish. The name of the person with the top fish in each category is put in a hat. And it's the fish categories are black crappie, yellow perch, lake trout, cusk or burbot, depending on where you're from, white perch, pickerel, and I think that's it. I think I got them all. Oh, and rainbow trout. So those are the categories. So the top weight of each of those from each day is put into the bucket to win. And and it's from each day. And then each day it starts all over again. And so if you've got second place on day 1 with a black crappie, which is what happened to our friend Mike, you don't get to win, even if your fish is bigger than the black crappie on day 2.
Okay.
So the day two black crappie was significantly smaller than the day 1 black crappie that was second place that Mike caught. And so Mike only won $200 and didn't have a shot at the $15,000 this year. And of course, that made his science brain go crazy. Like, first of all, it didn't feel fair to him. But second, he was wondering, are the fish on day 2 smaller as a norm than they are on day 1? And he asked a couple of the officials, I did the same thing, I asked a couple of the officials, why the fish feel smaller on day 2? They said they're always smaller on day 2. So when Mike heard someone say they're always smaller on day 2, he went, wait a minute, that's anecdotal. I want the data. And that's what we're going to be talking about with Mike in just a minute here.
All right. Good for you, Mike. We really appreciate all the work you did getting this data together. It's very interesting. I'm not real sure about some of these charts because I'm kind of science.
That's why we let him describe them. We'll put the charts up at fishnerd.com and
Good
people
deal.
can look at them. He's a data scientist, so nerds will love this stuff. We're going to let him describe the whole thing. We'll take you through it, and then you and I can come back and talk about the ethics of it and what the results were. You good for that?
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Oh, incidentally, by the way, it was just Mike's birthday, so happy birthday, Mike.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Happy birthday, Mike. All right, let's get to it. I want to welcome Mike STEFFAN to the podcast. Mike is a friend of ours, and he won the Great Rotary Fishing Derby, Ice Fishing Derby. Was it 2 years ago, Mike?
3 years ago,
2020.
right before it went to shit.
Right before everything went to shit. That's right. And you won that big derby. What'd you win? How much money did you win?
$15,500.
$15,000 for a black crappie.
Mm-hmm.
And then so to you this past weekend was the Great Rotary Ice Fishing Derby, and you went back to try and repeat that process. And on the Saturday of the Derby, you caught a black crappie that was pretty big, right? How big was it?
2 pounds, 2.34 pounds.
Right. And so
A little under 16 inches. Yeah, a little under 16.
which is a monstrous fish.
Yeah.
It's a monstrous fish. And it was among the biggest crappie caught all weekend.
It was the second biggest.
It was the second, but it was among the top 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you caught that on Saturday.
Yep.
And if you had caught that on Sunday, the way this derby works, that people don't know, is there's 2 days of derby. And as you catch these big fish, you kill them and hang them on a board. Well, we can talk about the ethics on that. We'll probably on the show later talk about the ethics of that. But you hang them on a board, and then the biggest fish of the day wins big prizes, and all the fish that are standing get awards too. Is that how that works?
Yeah, pretty much. They ask you can keep your fish too if they want it, but like this was funny. This last time I brought it. You're supposed to bring in a dead fish, but most of the time, you have a fish on ice. They'll flop for like the whole day if they're cold. So brought it in and it still moves, and then they hit it with like a hammer, and they're like, "Oh, you still want this, or do you want this?" I'm like, "Not anymore."
You smacked with a hammer.
Yeah.
And anyway, so they hang on the board, and then there's winners each day. And then how do they pick the winning fish? Is it the biggest over the course of the weekend, or is it the biggest on the day? So the big grand prize fish.
So it's biggest over the course of the weekend. Saturday and Sunday are kind of like 2 individual days, but it's the biggest fish of the weekend for 7 different species.
For 7 species. And if you had hung your fish on Sunday, which you could have done, you could have held that overnight on Saturday and hung it on Sunday, you would have won the day on Sunday.
I would have won $500 on Sunday. Yeah, easily. Like the fish that were on the board on Sunday would not have won any money on Saturday.
Right. And so that $200 of heartbreak, and I remember you messaged me and you were weeping, caused you to go into this big depression, and the only thing that could cure it was statistics.
Yeah, as I saw what I thought was a difference between days, and I wanted to know if it was actually true.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to the officials, so I was at the board on Saturday afternoon, and they were saying, it was anecdotal at the time, that Sunday fish are always smaller. That's what they told me. I went, really?
Yeah.
That's making sense.
And I've noticed that anecdotally also, but I was like, I wonder if that's actually true.
So you dug in. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So historically they posted the data on Facebook, or the fish, each fish, all the fish for each day on Facebook, and they would put up the people, and the sizes and how much they won, and do it for Saturday and Sunday. And they still do that. However, it's not on Facebook anymore. They do it on their own website, but they've had it up since 2013, where you're able to get data off just these Facebook posts.
So that's 10 years of data.
So I took all of, so it's, it's a decent amount. So it's, it's 10 fish for the weekend for each species. So it was like 500 data points. So it ended up being like between all fish and all species. And I just looked at it between 2022 or 23 and then 2013. And I just kind of looked at, what happens over time. And I looked at specifically what I was interested in, like you said, looking at, is there a difference between Saturday and Sunday between the fish?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there is, at least not for every species. For black crappie, the species that I always fish for during the Derby, they are significantly bigger on Saturday than they are on Sunday.
Yeah. Any guess as to why?
It's probably a bunch of different reasons, but I'm guessing there's probably not as many people fishing on that day. It definitely clears out every time. I mean, you've seen them get on those, if you go to specifically Winnipesaukee on Sunday, there's just not nearly as many people out there.
Well, people have to work on Monday, so they go home.
Yeah.
So-
Or then people say, like, oh, people are probably hungover, and that's probably true too.
well, and also they burn out on Saturday.
Yeah.
They go in it before sunrise, fish till dark, drink all day, barely eat any food, and then Sunday rolls around. They're late to get out of bed, because they got
Yeah.
skunked on Saturday. Because most people on Winnipesaukee on the Derby get skunked.
Yeah.
You see very few people catching fish.
Very,
out there.
yeah. And actually, yeah, the fish and game officer came and checked me, and I was the only one who said he actually had a decent amount of fish.
Incidentally, I was on Long Island on Saturday. This is part of Winnipesaukee, and I was taking a walk out to go fishing. And I bumped into these guys on a 4-wheeler, and they were fishing there. And I was chatting with those guys, and I said, "Oh man," they were like, "Man, we've been fishing for 2 days straight, haven't caught anything." This was on Sunday, and they said, "But Fish and Game said some guy at States Landing. If you want to know where to fish, look for the guy in the blue pop-up tent on
No,
the
did
sled."
they really say that?
He did. And he was
There's people who recognize
and he
me now.
said, "I think the guy's name is Mike." And I went, "Oh, I know Mike." And he goes, "No, you don't." I'm like, "No, I really do." He goes, "Everyone says they know people." And he was giving me a hard time. He thought I was like trying to name drop. I'm like, "No, I really do know Mike. He's a legend."
It's weird now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like a fishing celebrity of sorts.
Yeah, there are people who recognize me when I go out there, and they'll look me up and like, "That is you. I thought it was." And I was like, "Yeah."
All right. So tell us. So you went through you measured these fish and you put these charts together. You put a lot of charts together.
Yeah, so I did 6 different figures. I
Mhm.
looked at let me go through them really quick. So I looked at which states people are coming from that are actually making it onto the board.
Mhm.
I was just curious. I mean, I knew there wasn't going to be many women, but I looked at compared to men versus women in terms of people on the board.
Was it like
and then I looked-
90%? Was it like ridiculous?
It was 5% women.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah, it's not, and most of them, if you look at, I mean, there's not many, so it's not a huge number. But if you look at them by species, most of them are actually black crappie. Only for white perch, for some reason, only one woman has ever made it on the board in the past decade.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. Well,
2 for lake trout, 2 for cusk,
wow.
6 for pickerel, 4 for rainbow trout,
Mm.
and then 6 for yellow perch again. But
That's
yeah, black
shocking.
crappie has 9, so it's
Well,
not
you
many
know-
still, but
Well,
It's
so
interesting.
I guide for crappie once in a while, and this is sexist, but I find women are better crappie fishers than men overall if they're inexperienced, and they might be a sensitivity thing because these crappie hit so light sometimes.
well, I mean, think about it too. I think a lot of women are also happy to just catch a fish, and then so many more men are like, "I want to catch the biggest fish there is."
Right. So they're
So I
gonna.
bet the majority of people out there probably fish for lake trout and cusk and like the bigger species. But for this derby, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's fish smarter, not harder.
Yeah, boy. And
Because like think about like for you, I mean, I've only ever caught one lake trout that would maybe be big enough to like win money.
right.
But I've caught a bunch of crappie.
That's true. That's true. And I've never caught a lake trout that would win money. I've
Yeah.
caught lots of rainbows that would. And in fact, I got one Saturday morning, and you told me to hold it and put it on the board, and it would have made the board Saturday,
Mhm.
but it would have got bumped.
Yeah.
Because it was just shy of 19 inches and had to be 16 to get on the board, and all the ones that stayed in the board were over 20. So
Yep.
at first I felt bad letting it go, but then after the weekend was over and I would have lost it anyway, I didn't feel bad anymore about it. Although it would have been nice to have a fish on the board so you can the bragging rights. I got on the board once,
Yeah. I've gone on there 3 times now that I've won money.
That's
And
pretty-
one time I got bumped on a Saturday, I think it was,
Mhm.
by a fish that would have been losers the next day.
It's so funny. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
And your rainbows, I looked at at that part of the thing was looking at each individual species over time, and rainbows have actually gotten bigger
Yeah.
in the past decade.
But rainbows are
On
the
the
only
board.
stocked fish that people are fishing for in the Derby.
Yeah,
So
so
they're-
it kind of makes sense, and I bet they might know something about the genetics. Maybe that's a known size class, or maybe they, 10, probably not 10 years ago, but maybe I don't know how often they stock it or whatever, but they might know like, oh, this year a bunch of the fish that were released 5 years ago are coming to this size.
Yeah.
So you could probably track that because they do that for salmon.
That's
like
true.
certain years are better because they know that 5 years ago we put in these fish, and they're doing really well.
Well, so it's pretty neat, and the graphs are fun to look at. I'm gonna steal them and I'm gonna put them up at fishnerds.com so anyone who's listening who wants to go look at the data can. and you can draw whatever conclusions you want from it because it's really not like it's not in-depth study. It's just raw data. But it is fun to think about how the second day is different. Now, going forward, will you start holding your big fish till day 2?
I actually did it one time, and it didn't matter that time. But I was very much debating it on Saturday, but I felt pretty good. I was like, I think I'm going to win. I'll be fine.
Right.
And when I won the Derby 3 years ago, that was a Saturday fish.
That was a Saturday fish, and I also think that if you hold fish, they lose weight.
Yeah, so I was wondering about that. I talked about that with Dave a little bit, like the best way to do things. And like, yeah, you do lose weight, but like you don't want to lose blood either. So there'd be ways you could do it. You could actually, if you think about it, you could put a fish into like very pure water while it's dead, and presumably that water by diffusion would move into the fish.
Oh, using science.
Yeah.
Get a waterlogged fish.
Exactly. So you kill the fish so that it's not like, because the fish, a freshwater fish in particular, will be like pushing water out of its stomach, out of its body all the time, just because water's constantly trying to get in. But if it's dead, it doesn't do that anymore.
God.
So the water just naturally goes into the fish.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
No, you let a fish suffocate on the ice all day. So,
yeah,
like
exactly.
a normal
and then they hit it with a
fisher,
hammer later on.
Then smack it with a hammer. Yeah. So anyway, it's fun to look at, and you got some money, $200. That's nothing to sneeze at.
$200, yeah, not too bad. But
yeah, paid for
I
your
was so
gas.
close to another. Because I figure I was one in 8 people away from winning, or another chance of winning it again.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing and fun too. Fun to get that recognition. So can we briefly talk about the ethics of this fishing derby?
Sure.
Because there's a lot of people, Fish Nerds fans, I saw on our Facebook page, someone commented, how old school the idea was to have a catch and kill derby where you kill the biggest examples of every species of fish. What do you think about the ethics here?
I mean, well, if you look at the stats, though, some of the fish are going down, only white perch and yellow perch, but really it's not doing anything at a population level. So it's probably honestly not doing too much.
Yeah, not that big a deal. We're not fishing for rare fish.
No, that too.
Yeah, it's not like we're putting white fish.
It's only a
on the board.
Weekend. If it was every weekend, it would be different.
Yeah, it's statewide. I don't love the catch and kill concept of derbies too much. And so here's where the ethics falls and it gets confused with my greed. Because I fish it because I want to win something. And
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be keeping these big fish either.
Right.
This weekend, if I had the crappie I probably would have kept, it came from deep water, so it had some barotrauma going on. But there's a good chance it wouldn't have gone back down.
Right.
Or maybe it would have gone down and just floated back up.
Right. But you would, as long as you can't see it, you don't feel so bad about it.
Exactly.
And incidentally, all these fish are collected and brought to Squam Lake Science Center to feed the raptors. So they aren't just getting thrown in a pile someplace. They're actually being used to feed birds. But I would love to see, and we haven't seen it yet in New Hampshire. I know out west I've heard about stories like this where they're doing digital derbies now, where when you register, you get like a little puck, and you get it that day of the event, and you put that down next to the fish you catch, take photos on special measuring tape, and it's like a texting thing or an app, related thing. And I can imagine a day where we have a digital fish board.
Yeah, I think it would be reasonable. What do you do, though, if the fish is the same exact size? Because there was, going through the data, there was several times where there'd be the same exact size fish, but there'd be a weight difference. Right,
because you can only, with that kind of derby, you can only do by length. I think you'd have to just split.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Somebody would just have to be just a decision, and then you just stick with it, I guess.
Yeah, or first one caught.
That too. Yeah.
You can make it as simple as that. First one caught. And that way no one's holding fish day 2.
Yeah.
So encourage that. So anyway, lots to talk about there. Mike, I'm not going to keep you much longer. I just wanted to call and thank you for being so nerdy about this. And I should have fished with you on Saturday. I almost came down, and I really wanted to check out some of these places, and I couldn't get on the ice in a few places I wanted to go to. And then I found Long Island, and I went there instead. And
sorry, most of the time I enjoy fishing by myself anyways.
Yeah, you're not good company. All I caught was a couple of was a whole bunch of yellow perch. So nothing of size.
Yeah, Sunday was really slow for me. Saturday was good for the first 2 hours, and then pretty slow after that. But
yeah, I guess
all of Sunday wasn't great.
I guess Vinny and the gang caught like 18 or 19 Lakers in the course of 2 days.
Yeah, they did great.
They did really, really well. They've really been dialing it in too. They've been going every day. So, and the spots they're going to are private property. They got permission to access, and you can't get on the ice this year because the ice is so garbage. So,
they got. I haven't gone for
themselves.
Lakers at all. Yeah, this year I've only been out a handful of times. Really,
I haven't tried. No. I haven't tried. I've been guiding and talking too much.
I might try going Sundays. My plan. I'll let it kind of hopefully harden up a little bit tomorrow.
I guess we down to 12 degrees, so it should be fine. All right,
That's my thought.
All right, Mike, Stefan, thanks so much for giving me your time and for being so nerdy about this stuff. And again, I'll share pictures of these charts at fishnerds.com. People can check all that out. And we're back. John King, Clay Groves with you here. I feel like I'm on radio, like you don't know who you're talking to. Like every time you come back on, Fish Nerds Podcast, Fish Nerds. And that's the trick with radio, John, is you almost say the name of your station like you have Tourette's. So, all right, we have 10 minutes to get this done, John. We're going to run out of time, so we're going to do a short one. All right, so you heard Mike's explanation of what was happening. Yeah, and really interesting to find out that on average, the day 2 fishes are smaller. And then he and I briefly got into the ethics of this contest, and he had no problem whatsoever with the ethics here. He said there's plenty of those kinds of fish around, numbers are good, and anglers aren't hurting the populations. Now I know you have a strong opinion here. I want to hear yours.
Well, actually, when I first you put on this topic for the show, of course I got really, my hackles jumped right on up, and
which I like, by the way. I like when John King's angry.
Well, I mean, I said, I'm against kill derbies in all cases, but or so I thought, because ultimately I think it's all nuance. I think Mike makes a great point. He's got the data to back it up that this tournament doesn't seem to be hurting nothing. It's only one weekend a year. It does a lot of good for people. The fish are not wasted. You can either keep them or you can donate them. And even if they, and don't let being smashed by a hammer stop you from cleaning out that crappie the rest of the way. But anyway, the thing is, this is this tournament. But when you put this topic up, I looked up another tournament, a shark tournament, that had my blood just boiling.
Well, shark tournaments, whole thing, man. It's so bad.
We don't have time to get into it, and of course I'm a nerd, so I spiraled off into how poor the journalism was. But then again, I'm like, it's not that bad. And I give the guy about a B. It's TV. It was a TV article from the TV, so what do you want? And so on. So, I don't want to say that, I mean, kill tournament, it's old school, right? It's old school.
Well, that's where I'm at, John. This tournament makes $100,000. Yeah. How difficult would it be to do a digital tournament? Get a big giant board up there that's got digital readouts. Give people on the day of the tournament, get a little puck or something. They can take a photo of a fish or an official measuring device, do it by length, and do it all digitally. Let every fish go. It would. I don't have a problem. Like to me, it's 2023.
Well, I mean, the kayakers, that's kind of the way they got to do it, because they can't, they don't have a live well. They can't, so that's the way they do everything. Now, Mike made a great point that, we all know that you can get a fatty that might be 18 inches long, but will outweigh a typical 18-inch fish by a half pound to a pound or something, so. Well,
but still, that 18-inch fish might just ate dinner. Like, it doesn't mean it's a bigger fish. There's these nuances in it. And for me, John, the solution is, if you got 2 fish that measure in exactly the same length, the one that got caught first wins. It's easy.
I think that's a great way to resolve it.
Simple.
Also, if you could get people to accept the math, all you got to do is length and girth.
Oh, that works.
And then you can run the math on it. Now,
right, but then on those really cold winter days, it means handling fish for a long time in the cold, and that can stress that you might be killing that way as well. So
right. Look, I said we're going to have to be careful with this, brother. I told you
it's a hard one, John. I fished
spiral off into tournaments in general.
John, I fished a bass tournament this summer. I fished a bass tournament. I did one bass tournament a year for veterans. It's the only one I do.
Yeah.
And I saw so many dead bass after a tournament. I've never been to a bass tournament before. I don't know if that's normal, but I saw a bass swim away and die. And
I'm sorry to cut you off, Clay, but I listened to that, and you were like, well, they're pulling them out of 25 foot of water. And in a cool lake like Winnipesaukee, I think it was where it was at, right? When you drag a bass up from that deep and you handle it at all, it's a goner. So,
but we don't know where they caught them all. There was a lot of fish there. Some could be from shallow, some deep. I think it's just it was so hot that day. Live wells weren't doing enough for them.
Right.
Stressful.
Well, like I say, we can't go down this rabbit hole. We'll have to have a whole new episode.
We should do a whole episode on it. We should get bass. We should get some pros who tournament fish to have it out with us.
Well, if
have a good conversation. So
we got friends. We got friends that fish. We fish the tournaments both on a club level and We got Angie Scott, who's a aspiring bass pro, and
Yeah,
so we got
let's get her on.
higher level.
Yeah, she just won a big outdoor award, so let's get her on to celebrate with her,
absolutely,
so.
because Angie's sitting around not doing nothing. No, I've already talked to her about it,
Yeah.
and she is willing, but it is a thing about the competitiveness and this and that. I mean, people can, like I say, it's too big. Don't get me going, bro.
Okay.
I mean, really.
Well, I do want to cycle back to this talk a bit, but it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
There's a lot going on out there with it. So we'll come back down to this topic again. But you did want to talk a little bit. You had a little bit of a contest you wanted to put together, a little bit of prize package going on here.
Right. I do. Because, when I rejoined the show, Lure Love was just dad humor and Lure Geek Out. And
by the way, talking to the Lure Love fan, our friend today on the ice, we both agree that Lure Love was good enough to be one of those shows that made it, and we were shocked that it did. It was such a great show. The editing, the writing, the scripting, all so perfect, so good. We love that show.
Oh man, I'm blushing here, brother. I mean, that's awful nice. I really do. We put a lot of heart into it, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and it was a real crusher. But I understand completely why Tim had to pursue another
death will slow you down.
Interest, and of course now he's dead. So there you go. But seriously, no, Tim is alive, fine and well.
Mostly
Rest
well.
his heart. And I'm not letting him off the hook. He's going to contribute to this show, by golly.
Oh, yeah, we'll see. We'll hear from Tim again.
Or he's going to wish he had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to talk about, we got a new correspondent coming on soon, Todd Correa, the fish wrap writer. And the first piece he submitted to me was a interview with an 8-year-old that has a tackle shop named after her, and I'm not going to give away anymore. I want you to tune into that show when we get it on. But if we're going to handle this controversial stuff, then I want a positive ending, because
Absolutely.
one of my favorite things at Varmints, when Paul was in Varmints, was they would end it with a kid saying something cute, so we could hear about how endangered tigers are and get all depressed. But then a 5-year-old would come on and go, Tiger's really cool, and I like tigers, and so then you're feeling a little better. So what we're going to do is, I just want y'all to send in sound clips of your kid, and I'm not going to put it at 8. I don't care if your kid's 35 or 5.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Talking about their biggest, their favorites, their best, as in biggest fish, biggest catch, best time, favorite fish, that sort of thing. Do it on your phone. Just make a little sound bite and send it to clay@fishnerds.com. And you send it in. We use it on the show. I will send the brilliant mind that decided to participate with us a crappie doula.
So when you send it in, send us your mailing address as well.
Yes. I lost my psychic ability when I turned 60. But also, I want you to get the girls. I don't care which one of your girls. Get Blue Jay, get Zoe, get Kristen, get somebody, because you can't do it. You're intimately involved. But I want somebody to go through the mailing list. Someone go through your list of listeners, however you want to do it. But we're going to do this every month. We're going to draw for a prize from Glasswater Angling. It'll be, worth about $20-25, something like that. But have one of the girls draw a name for me, and once again, we'll email them. We will get their address and so forth. But I want to start. We did this on Lure Love. We had a lot of fun with it. And we're going to keep it going here.
Well, why don't we do our Patreon subscribers there? Patreon is the reason the show, because we can afford to put the show on the air. So our Patreon listeners on there, the ones who actually fund the show, they're already entered.
Well, they are already entered. In fact, look, this is your show. You decide. I don't care. All I do is want a drawing, want to send some stuff out, because we love our listeners. We appreciate every single one. And it's just a lot of fun. And of course, look, we all know that this is advertising for Glasswater, because when they take our lures out and use them, they're going to want some more, and they're going to show them to their friends and all that anyway. But this way I get to advertise and yet not seem like a opportunist scumbag.
You know what, John? I'll tell you what, John. We don't make money on this podcast. So if you can sell a few lures, or I can sell a few guided fishing trips here and there, that's fine. This podcast has been going around for 11 years, 307 episodes, full episodes, and about 120 bonus episodes. I think it's okay, and it's fine for you to advertise your wares. So you've earned that. You've been with us a long time, and people should go to your website and buy your stuff.
Well,
Yeah, don't need to apologize for having you, and you make great lures, and you don't need to apologize for that.
Thank you,
So,
thank you. And everything is done with love, even if I get a side benefit, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, that's all I had, my friend.
All right. Well, we got to get out of here. So, we want big thank you to Mike STEFFAN for doing the stats for us. John, thank you for coming on, forcing me to make this show every 2 weeks now. If we get enough listeners, we'll come back to weekly. But right now, let's just do 2 weeks and kind of ease back in again. And big thanks to John, who came ice fishing with us today. That was really fun to be on the ice with a listener. He's such a fanboy. He'd be like, "Oh, remember when you guys talked about this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember that." So really fun to have listeners like that. Reminded me of you,
Love
John.
that guy. I mean, I love this dude.
Yeah. Oh, you love this
so
guy.
lucky.
Yeah, and he was a huge Lure Love fan. He was so sad when that show shut down. So big shout out there. Thanks to our families for letting us make the stupid podcast. I'm going to end it by myself. So until next time, follow the code of the fish nerd. Spawn early and often. Never trust a free lunch with strings attached, and swim against the current every chance you get.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast. Just for the halibut. Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish nerds.